You-
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special New Year's Rockin' Eve edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday. It's not quite December 31st, it's 27th, but nonetheless, we have our New Year's uh, Gab Fest group assembled here. Thanks to Mayor Randy Rowse for joining us and beaming in from parts unknown is City Councilwoman Meagan Harmon. Are you there? There. Where's your children? I thought you were going to bring all of your 32 children with you.
You
No.
know what? They will pop in for a snack any moment, I'm sure. They're blissfully watching TV, and the other one is
Oh, Derry.
Andrew.
Andrew. You'll
Can you say hi?
recall I gave you all the names for your children, but well, that's a different subject. And our all-star panel of top local journalists, Gwyn Lurie, editor-in-chief of the Montecito Journal, Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Santa Barbara Independent, and Josh Molina, the Joe Rogan of Santa Barbara and a man of many platforms. Thank you all for joining Newsmakers to talk about the year just about to end and the one to come, 2024. Councilwoman Harmon, let me start with you if you don't mind, because have been obviously been preparing for this event for many, many weeks.
I was at the park when you called me. I'm just amazed that I'm here. This is like it's a miracle.
Oh no, I have your headline. You mean it's today? Okay, we can do that. I want to start real quick just by going around the horn on what everybody is going to think is the most memorable story of 2024 in the political policy space, as we like to say in Santa Barbara. Council member Harmon, what are you going to remember most about 2024?
Well, first, I should say thank you so much for having me, Jerry. I should have started there. I appreciate it. Really happy to be here again. Um, Look, there's so much that happened nationally, but I'm in an all politics is local frame of mind. So keeping it here at home, I have to say, the election of Councilmember-elect Wendy Santamaria is pretty much the biggest story of 2024 in terms of the implications moving forward. That's pretty huge. It's a shift for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for keeping it at 60 seconds. I'm now going to give Mayor Rouse 10 minutes to respond. Uh,
He'll take it whether you give it or not.
there you have it,
I'll listen to you.
Mayor. We're 4 days away from the new year. She's throwing down the gauntlet on rent control. Wendy Santa Maria's famously ran on rent control and defeated Alejandra Gutierrez, who did not. You've been in the majority 4-3. Looks like that's slipping away, Mayor. What do you say?
Well, yeah, the margin of victory was impressive. No, there's very few people that actually voted, but that's okay. She won it fair and square, and that has been her stated position. Now, I've only met Wendy one time, and that was at the Independent Party. And I was over there propping up Nick because he was about ready to fall over, and Wendy walked up, and I said hello to her. And so we haven't had a chance to chat yet, which I'm looking forward to because I don't know anything about her other than what I've read in the paper and heard her speak a few times. So looking forward to that. I do have to say that I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. Meagan brings in an absolutely adorable baby. I'm sitting here. Here, I'll go adorable on you.
Oh,
All
that's a
right.
good look.
So,
There you go.
and someday, Andrew, if you're over there, I would just like to say you and I are going to sit down and have a tall glass of milk and talk about your mom someday very, very pointedly. So,
He's so good sitting there. Look at him sitting there.
Well, that's why I had myself muted, but he's a camera ready baby.
He really is. He's like total Instagram.
now that looks like the E Trade baby. Look at that. That's amazing.
Win, Montecito, biggest story of the year. What do you say?
Okay, I have to give three. Sorry, I'm a rule breaker. Election of Roy Lee.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty um, monumental. Approval of the Miramar expansion and the sort of ruckus leading up to it. And I would say that the election of Donald Trump, again, it resonates locally, nationally, and in all the ways. So,
All right, fair enough. Nick, you have a column on your top stories of 2024 in the paper this week, or at least online. I don't know. I can't quite tell what you guys do at the end of the year. Um, and the one that really jumped out at me was you getting you're hit by a car when you were riding your bike. But other than that, which I imagine would be the personally most memorable one, what do you think?
Well, I think the Trump election is, again, it ain't local, but it's totally local. And the fact that Elon Musk cast such a shadow over Vandenberg and every place within 150 miles of Vandenberg. And people are saying, hey, pretty please, can you do something about the sonic booms? And Elon Musk is the chairman of a non-existent committee to improve efficiency in government.
And the largest contractor of the government. Hey,
And the largest contractor and largest contributor. So I think that's a pretty big shadow that we will all be dealing with. I've been beating the gong kind of obnoxiously, I think, but I can't resist. We'll be doing it some more. The fact that Roy Lee came from nowhere to beat Josh Williams is a huge upset. A victory for Roy Lee, and I would say obviously a much bigger defeat for Josh Williams, who's been in office for about 20 years plus. And so that is going to tilt things, but I think it is yet to be seen how, other than in canvas and probably maybe housing issues. And then, of course, Wendy Santa Maria, who until this year, most people didn't know much about unless you were part of sort of the grassroots organizers community. I think the votes are there for rent control. I think before people started saying it's a done deal, et cetera, people should remember there have been 4 votes when Cathy Maria was mayor, and nothing happened, and there was a white paper to study it. I'm sure that before any action takes place, there is going to be study. I think it's worth noting that the city administrator, Kelly McAdoo, comes from a community in Northern California where they have rent control, and she is very comfortable administering rent control. And yes, there is the $6 million elephant of Santa Monica with the registry, but there are lots of other models out there. So what it looks like, the devil is in the details and the salvation is in the details. So we got a long way to go before that one is ready for prime time.
All right. Well, we've gotten a little ahead of ourselves since we now know what the biggest story of 2025 is going to be, or at least 2 of them. Josh, stay with 2024 for just a minute. You covered a lot of ground. Obviously, housing was probably the biggest single category of stories. But what do you take away from 2024?
Well, obviously, housing is continually the biggest issue. But for me, the biggest shock, surprise was how Doss Williams found a way to lose, figured out a way to lose and kind of torpedo 20 years of public service. And that's shocking to me. It's stunning. I don't really know how that happened. Roy Lee's a great guy, nice guy, but it never should have happened. I mean, Doss didn't campaign. He didn't campaign well. And it was just so counter to his whole way of being a political official in the past. And he's always been the strongest campaigner, the best campaigner. And you could ask him questions about how good of a politician he was, but he was a great campaigner. And so I'll probably spend till my dying day trying to figure out why Doss Williams decided not to campaign for re-election in any substantive way, other than he just overlooked Roy Lee, which is just shocking because, you're supposed to show respect for your enemies, but your political
Well,
enemies,
that would be new for Dust, sure.
Well,
but
I mean,
running a strong campaign. And so I think he was surrounded by the wrong people at the right time who kind of fed into his ego instead of pushing back. And I think all of the groundwork that Laura Capps laid in her campaign, it finally kind of surfaced all at once, and it was this perfect storm. But it is very shocking. I mean, he's been in office for 20 years, and he may try to make a comeback, but I just
Yeah,
never would have predicted he would have lost to Roy Lee.
let me go a little meta on you, because I see in Doss's campaign, failed campaign, something of what happened to the Democrats nationally, which is that they spent all their time talking to each other. And you'll remember famously that Darcel Elliott, the soon to be outgoing chair of the party, said that Roy Lee isn't a real Democrat. And so I think the Democrats have succeeded in deciding who's a real Democrat and who isn't. And guess what? They don't have enough votes anymore to put things across. And it's a very elitist and ideologically strict. You got to call people certain things and have certain initials and so on and so forth. So that's that.
Well, it's Jerry also. I mean, the Democratic Party has become, like so many people in America, just the algorithm jumped the rail from the internet into their own work and personal lives, and they're seeing only infinite mirrors of themselves. I think you're right. I think I mean, the Democratic Party is supposed to be a big tent party, which means there are lots of people in that tent with lots of different points of view. It is not a monolith. But one other thing, Josh, I'm going to save you some time between now and your dying days so you can direct it to other things.
When is that? How much time is that?
It's not just that
I don't know. You stay away from the grill, brother. It might be.
It's not just that Doss didn't campaign. I think even if he had campaigned, he would have had a hard time winning. I think he put the final nail in his coffin when he didn't even allow the Nets to go to a conversation on the Board of Supervisors. I think that was just the final straw for this community who said, oh, he actually doesn't really care how we feel. I mean, that's a very...
The final straw was, being too afraid to come on Newsmakers. That was the final.
That may be it too.
You know what, Jerry, I have a hunch that was the one that moved the needle the least.
That straw. It was the straw that broke the back, pal.
I mean,
let me get our the mayor and Ms. Harmon in here again, because I do want to draw some threads from what folks have just said. One of the things that I think is really huge that was not much noticed, although Nick, you guys did a story on it, and Josh, you did too, which Sheila Lodge, former Mayor Sheila Lodge, leaving the Planning Commission, and Wendy Santa Maria coming on the council somehow seems to me to be of a piece where we've moved into a new era, and perhaps it has to do with district elections where I don't recall Miss Santa Maria ever mentioning, anything that was best for the city. It was always best for a particular group of tenants or for her district. But what do you make of that, Meagan? Don't you think that's a rather elegant historical frame to draw the departure of Mayor Lodge from the Planning Commission and Wendy Santa Maria coming on the council?
I'm not sure elegant is the word that I would have used, but it's definitely a generational shift. I mean, I think that is a very interesting sort of counterbalance. But I think the idea that Mayor Lodge was this sort of traditionalist, and I mean, she was one of the architects of the AUD program. And when that came forward, that was pretty revolutionary. I think it's fair to say that word. It was not totally well accepted. And she was a huge, huge part of that, if not the key architect.
She was the key person who made that happen.
Yeah. So I don't actually see it as, I mean, it's a changing of the guard. Sorry, Andrew's just throwing things. I keep putting things back and he throws it off. So it's a changing of the guard.
You might as well show.
I know I can't. but the idea that they're so far apart in how they think about new ideas that will work for the city is just not true. I mean, they're different ideas, but Mayor Lodge was certainly revolutionary in many ways, not only for being the first, longest serving woman, but also because of the policies that she pushed. And I'm sure that Councilmember-elect Santa Maria will see herself in a very similar way and as sort of following in those footsteps, and different but similar.
Mayor?
Well, it didn't take Councilmember Harmon long to go to the age issue, but it was quick, a lot longer than I thought. It's funny because Sheila, and we discussed this before we came on the air. I think it's like 95, I believe, but I still tap her all the time for, particularly on housing issues. She is a wellspring of knowledge, can work through some of the arcane regulations and whatnot in a heartbeat, and it certainly gets on my case when I misspeak. I must say about that. So, the idea that it's, we don't live in a Kubrick film where we're going to have everybody over 30 years old just offer themselves voluntarily. This is, in fact, an era where we could use
Miss Harmon.
Yeah, well, Miss Harmon could even she could have an epiphany of wisdom and all of a sudden decide maybe I'm not the fourth vote for rent control after all. I mean that.
I hear that's what you're lighting candles for, huh?
Well, I mean, it's at some point, everybody, grows up and whatnot. We actually had.
As an aside, it's actually rent stabilization, not rent control.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Yeah.
Has vacancy
that is
decontrol.
Go to work for the
thing.
Pentagon with your euphemisms. It's really gun safety. It's not gun
Oh,
control.
God. Okay, potato, depends on where you're from. I get it, but the rent stabilization. Oh, please. Oh, please. But the problem is that as you look back and you say, okay, we had a referendum on rent control. I think, Nick, do you remember, was it in the 80s or the 90s when it went to the ballot? I think it was 80s.
It was definitely in the 80s. We've had many, but I think
Was that 1880 or 1980?
Oh, stop. No,
don't jump. Piling on, Gwyn. Way to go.
State ballot.
But the reality is, the material conditions have changed. So, I mean, the rents in Santa Barbara have always been outrageous, but the level of outrageousness and the disconnect between what people are making. I mean, it used to be you could stand on your toes and get your nostrils above the water level. Now you can't get close to that. And so
nice try, Meagan.
So I just think that the material reality that people are confronting in housing has taken on an element that's just different.
But it's not going to produce one single unit of new housing.
Well, you know what, Jerry? The question is, what's going to produce a single unit of affordable housing? I mean, the one thing that we had, which you always, in your haste to beat up on poor Josh Williams, the one thing you could beat him up on, which you don't enough, is the eradication of the redevelopment agency, which actually did put money in the bank so local governments could actually build affordable housing. Giving developers big breaks to give you a couple of crumbs of affordable housing isn't really going to make it that much better.
Right, but going back to we brought the AUD earlier, and when that came out, it was actually widely popular. As a matter of fact, I had a few real estate people go, "That's the best thing you guys have ever done."
Of course, they would say that.
But also, but the thing was, the mantra was affordable by design. Smaller units will be automatically more.
It didn't work out that way.
Didn't work out that way. But the housing authority we have a fabulous housing authority, but they can only really build truly capitally affordable housing with tax credit financing. The anomaly is going to be the thing we're doing with them on Carrillo Street, where we put the property in. They've got an angel investor. That hybrid allows us to build a little bit of workforce housing, but it is not going to tip the needle into the kind of housing that everybody knows that we need, which is workforce housing.
Let's talk about workforce and jobs and business a little bit. Gwyn, I thought one of the interesting things is Coast Village Road has just been blossoming as a new it's not a new business center, but it's just it's taken a lot of the sheen from State Street, which I know will be done any minute now. But to talk a little bit about that, and has that just been organic, or to what extent has regulations or anything to do with that had to do with that the movement of business there?
I don't think it's taken this. I think the sheen was gone from State Street a decade before these stores and restaurants. I mean, when I moved here 16 years ago, there were 8 restaurants in Montecito. There are a lot more than 8 restaurants today. And look, a lot of people moved here during COVID. The 25% of the houses turned over. That's a lot of new people. And a lot of the people who came here as prices went up were people who could buy houses for cash, So and a lot of people sort of figured out that they could spend, that they could live here and work remotely. So there are more shoppers here now. And I think that goes to Rick Caruso's real push to open many more stores, which by the way is good for business in some ways, but will be challenging for Coast Village Road because I think when you have 24 stores at the Miramar, people staying at the Miramar might not be, and many more restaurants may not be so quick to run over to Coast Village Road to go shopping. So it still remains to be seen. We're still a few years off, but how that's going to impact local business. But I don't think it took the sheen off of State Street. I
Well,
think there's
Josh,
still room for sheen on State Street. And by the way, there are only there's a lot of people who live in Montecito, this might shock you all, who don't want to spend $200 on dinner, every time they go out, or who can't. So they're going into Santa Barbara to eat. So I think a lot of there are a bunch of new restaurants in Santa Barbara too. And I think that there's a real market for affordable stores. Like not, the stores here are beautiful, but really expensive. So I think there's still a real opportunity for State Street to bring in some businesses that normal people shop at.
Josh, we have the mayor and Meagan Harmon here, so we can congratulate them on State Street finally being finished. But you're the biz hawk guy. Give me your takeaway on kind of retail, State Street, Coast Village Road.
Well, there was a little bit of an increase in leases toward the second half of the year. A lot of these athletic leisure wear shops opened up, sports apparel. And so I know that the commercial real estate brokers were talking about that turnaround. There is small retail interest, but the problem is these big spaces where a CVS is, those places are staying vacant. And I think the difference between Coast Village Road and State Street, of course, is State Street is too big. It's too long. And it's more of an urban area. So you have lots of
Fortunately,
different.
it's closed though. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, a Coast Village Road is smaller. There's more control. It's a little bit more private property there in the facades. And so it's a different sort of clientele there. But I think that State Street's still a bit of a mess because they haven't figured out yet who it's for, whether it's for the bikes, the electric bicycle riders, whether it's for pedestrians, kind of for cars, a little bit higher, but not really. It's still kind of convoluted in what its intent is. And there are shops that are opening up, but not everybody is able to just ride an electric bike downtown. There's a certain demographic. And what I noticed too is I wish, since they're listening, they could figure out a way to open the street. She turns off her camera. They could open up the street in the evening. Because what I've noticed is that State Street does have a lot of people during the day, but if you're there in the evening, after it gets dark, 6 on, unless it's one of those program nights that the downtown organization does, it's pretty empty. And I feel like that's a waste of, a quarter to a third of the time that it could be used. I don't understand why there isn't some sort of hybrid, cars can be there after 6 or something like that, because, it seems to be dead at night, almost every night that I'm down there, which is quite a bit.
Well, Nick, you've been, of course, the most successful news space influencer in getting your wish that State Street be closed to everything except electric bikes. This year, having achieved this, do you feel now things are looking pretty good down there?
the hegemony of the electric bike. You know, you there is what is the Greek word for hysteria? Floating uterus.
I think
There's
it's
a lot of floating uteruses around this conversation on e-bikes. I mean, I don't know how many times cars plow into a pedestrian and some poor 79-year-old man is dead and his wife is like not very far off. The people, is there a hue and cry about that? You never mentioned that. It's just the 13-year-old kids zipping around their e-bikes making people uncomfortable. The reality is the e-bikes are a missing link in the transportation needs that we're all going to be experiencing when all this housing goes in, because there's not enough parking places to put them. So we better learn how to love the e-bike and take advantage of it and control it. And there are ways of controlling it. The city has not really tried to exert much control until very recently. So we're getting there.
Okay. You hear that, Mayor?
I've heard it loud and clear. I think Josh actually touched on something, and it's kind of what San Luis does quite a bit of, and what we do at Farmers Market on Saturdays and, of course, on Tuesdays. We bring out the barricades, close things off, open them back up. San Luis does it all the time all over the city, and it's great. You could have a hybrid. You could have everything you wanted to have. But when you have just, when it's closed, for example, in the daytime for parklets, for example, that are used at night, who's that fair for? For nobody. And Josh is right. At nighttime, you're walking down the street. I was walking after we lit the Christmas tree at Paseo Nuevo. My wife and my daughter and I walked up to Victoria Street to have dinner. And we were the only people we ran into. And I talked to some woman. She goes, I just don't feel safe. And I go, there's nobody here. What do you mean safe? Because there's nobody here. There's not even cars going by. I'm all by myself on the street. I'm not going to do it.
No, Randy, you're right. I mean, a lot of people, they come out like the new Fiesta 5 movie theater, and you come out of the movie there, and it's about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, and you feel like you've walked onto the set of a George Romero movie. And, and I've heard people say, I wouldn't feel comfortable being here if I was seeing a movie by myself. So I do think there is a sort of a desolate quality that makes people feel uncomfortable.
So I would just jump in here and say, of course, huge improvements are necessary, but the vast majority of feedback I get is not from people saying they are scared to walk on State Street. I would say that is probably rare. And even sort of just setting that to the side, I don't hear anyone saying, I felt way safer in 2019 when it was also desolate. Like, this is an ongoing problem that I think we have somehow attributed to the closure, and I'm not sure that that's the case. I think we're sort of just assuming that that's causing the challenges, and that's not true.
Councilmember, are you familiar with the phrase, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging?
You know what, Jerry? I'm gonna dig her out a little here, because I think Meagan's right. I think, and I said this on your last show that Randy and I were both on together. I think we should, I think it's, at the end of the day, the bikes are a red herring. It's not about that. I think it's bring great, interesting businesses there. Yeah. People will come. They just will. They're not going to not come because people are on their bikes in the street. It is
generational. People who live here, who are older, are not coming downtown because they fear for their lives.
But that's always been the case.
I'm going to interject here, because we have and still do have one of the best, most famous walking streets on the planet right out here. We built those big wide sidewalks to help accommodate that years ago. Nobody's walking on the blacktop now because of the bikes. When the street was open to normal traffic and trolley traffic, the bikes were in their lanes. We didn't have that problem until day one of the closure. And that was before the e-bikes. It was the wheelie boys coming down.
Yes, but
has the street itself being closed caused retail issues? No, but other places, Goleta, certainly Coast Village Road and whatnot, have recovered robustly. This happened in Fresno too. They changed back, and boom, the place that had been blighted came back. The rents on State Street right now are 3 times less than what they are on Coast Village Road, yet everybody wants to go to CVR because it's pleasant, it's happening, it's a nice place to be. We've lost tenants to Montecito. So my thing is, why are we sticking to status quo for whatever reason while the plan goes forward? And yes, Megan's right. There needs to be some major changes, but those changes aren't happening tomorrow. They're not happening next year. They're probably not happening next decade.
But you know what?
We get going back to work.
But
Well-
like so many of the important problems in our country, like the environment, like other things, they take a long time to change, but you still have to invest in them now. So, for example, when Jim Rosenfeld developed the Montecito Country Mart area, nobody went there. There was nothing there. And one by one, he started putting in kind of interesting, cool stores. And he went out there and he ran a campaign and he recruited people to come and he created a kind of environment where now there are people in those stores. And Coast Village Road was dead for years. So I think there needs to be a vision, and I think one needs to go for that vision, even if they have a 5-year horizon for achieving that vision.
What is the
And
vision, Megan? What is the vision for State Street?
Honestly, I think that is still in process, truthfully. I can't even spin that. I mean, I think as a community, we're still trying to sort through what it is we really want. And one of the challenges over
I think Andrew's expression says it all here.
I know, did you hear him make that raspberry noise? No, I think one of the challenges over the last year and how we haven't been able to move forward to implement even sort of medium or short-term fixes is there just hasn't been consensus. And that's something that I hope we can get to in this next year. Nobody's ever going to agree 100%. That's okay. But something that I'm really invested in moving forward this year is trying to find some
Well, other than the mayor, who is not signed on to the whatever the consensus appears to be, which is just shut things down and have e-bikes run wild.
I think, Councilmember Friedman has a pretty nuanced view of what the street should be. And then more importantly than council members, there is disagreement amongst community members about what they want.
But there's, Megan, as you just said, there's always going to be disagreement, and there aren't right or wrong choices. There are just choices, and you have to make one and commit to it. And then eventually,
this is
people will be happy with
it. We live in a binary reality.
Let me give you where the glass is half full as opposed to your 90% empty.
Okay, Mr. Grumpy.
Okay, we just
Mr.
got
Floating
business
Uterus.
improvement. The businesses just created a business improvement district. It has yet to bear any fruit. But for a long time, the business community, the owners were absent. They were like, okay, we are not actively engaged. Now they are taxing themselves to have an actual business improvement district. Coast Village Road has them. St. Louis Obispo has them. Everybody has them. So this is a new tool that they have. We also have, what's his name, who just opened up, 82 units of housing by State and Gutierrez Street, Peter Lewis. That is the first big vomit of housing on State Street that we really need. Now, it's not affordable.
Did you say vomit?
I said vomit. It's 82. That's a real number. It's not the 500 or whatever it's going to be where Paseo Nuevo is, but it is a step in. People talk, we want housing. We just got housing. We just got the Santa Barbara International Film Festival has taken over the Fiesta 5, which was really a Night of the Living Dead movie theater. They have yet to bear fruit, but we will see. I think it's a promising model. You have the library mall, which isn't programmed nearly as much as it needs to be, but it looks infinitely better than that perpetual construction project that's been there for like 100 million years. So we are seeing some improvement. We are seeing some movement. And I know you like to wet your pants over there and say the sky is falling, but there's actually some signs that things are getting a little bit.
There is movement, but I think, and I shouldn't say but, and I think as you try to land on a vision. I think one of the things, for example, that really left a hole was Nordstrom, for example.
Yeah.
So there is no parent in Santa Barbara that didn't shop at Nordstrom for kids, for shoes for their kids, and Macy's, I suppose as well. But there is nowhere to go if you want to buy your kids shoes in Santa Barbara.
All of that
Really.
is true, but I
There-
just have one question for anybody on the other side of this coin. What's the purpose and status quo? What possible thing are we serving with status quo? Because it was not planned, it was declared. It has no circulation element, apparently. It's a detriment to public safety. It's hindering public safety. So what have we accomplished outside of keeping a few restaurants alive, obviously, which is a good thing during the pandemic, but now we're still here. So when Kelly came to town, she tried to get us to, well, let's just open from Carrillo North. Also pushed back on. So I'm not, and I'm being sincere. I'm not being rhetorical. Why? What is the benefit of maintaining the status quo when we could just open up and do some flexibility, do the experimenting we should have been doing in this entire time, like San Luis does, like we do with the farmers market, which has been a successful run so far on State Street, on our Carrillo Street. Why aren't we doing that instead of just staring at this? And that's my question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I,
Megan, yeah, Randy put it well a couple months ago on a show when he said you all are nostalgic for the pandemic. That's why you.
is that what you said? I must have missed that one. Yikes.
Oh, you miss a lot of stuff I say, Megan. Trust
I
me.
almost missed today. No, wow. No, in answer to your question, Randy, it is experiential walking down that street. I understand. No, it is. My family likes it better than with cars.
But you don't walk on the street. You walk on the sidewalk. Nobody walks on the street that's sane.
Lots of people do.
Lots of people do. To your point, though, I think we're arguing what is an already agreed upon point, which is experimentation, different options. That's what's coming in this year. I mean, the last hearing we had on this item, I think there wasn't complete agreement about what it is those experiments will be 100%. But I think everybody was saying, okay, now is the time to get creative. And we all understand we need to do that
Or
work.
council members disagree that we should even close from Carrillo.
My problem is your idea of creative is.
Oh, that wasn't mine. That was Kelly.
concretized.
I
You
wanted
have
this.
one vision that you will accept.
I just wanted to know.
We've now gone on longer than the State Street Advisory Committee.
No, but can I just say one thing that when you
Real
talk
quick.
about being nostalgic, I think we're being nostalgic for a time that never was. Or that at least hasn't been in the 20 years I've been around these parts, since
I don't know.
or
I
the
have pretty good
16 years that
memory.
I've lived here. And it's a little like Make America Great Again. It's like, great again since when? Like,
Gwyn doesn't remember Piccadilly Square and when I used to shop there when I was a kid. Just kidding.
I don't. You're right.
Hold on, one thing. I just want to say about
that good.
the housing,
One more.
Nick.
I mean,
Peter
let me-
Lewis's housing, 2-bedroom is 6,500 and the studio is like 3,100. So I interviewed people there. There were doctors, professors. They were not young working
Oh, you're right.
professionals. Now I know that those people will move there and there's this whole escalator thing, but I don't think it's full to say that downtown housing yet is an answer for housing problems.
All right, I got one more issue I want to dig down a little bit. Nick, you brought it up, which is the rockets at Vandenberg. I think that is the single biggest issue, news story in Santa Barbara County, whatever is going on at Vandenberg, which I guess we're going to 100 a year now. Megan, this whole question of the rockets was before the Coastal Commission, where you represent Santa Barbara and you took a duck. But what's
On our lawyer's
is
advice.
there
okay?
anything that can be done here?
So I have to be pretty careful about what I say because we are in active litigation, as I think Nick reported. Wow, sorry, Andrew's just going to town.
I love this kid.
This is just not my day. Elon has sued the Coastal Commission and named the coastal commissioners as individuals, including me. So even though I was recused on the basis of a conflict under the government code, I'm in active litigation. So, I'm going to not try not to make it worse.
Megan, in your litigation, I think you should screen the movie Mary Poppins. Do you remember in Mary Poppins when the cannon went off on the roof of the building and every house shook like that every time? I think you should screen that because that's what it feels like. It's unbelievable. And we know people who've had their windows blown out.
And
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. I mean, I would say there are, some serious Coastal Act implications, not least of which the impacts on our animals and ocean resources, detritus getting in the water, beach closures, outside of all of the sort of noise.
how about the government financial corruption
I would
involved?
say that is not a Coastal Act issue specifically, but definitely something we can chat about offline.
Nick, it's huge. I mean, the whole thing is just a
Well,
scandal.
I think part of it is that which I haven't really gotten into as much as I should, is there was a hope and prayer in Lompoc that this would be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that there was a massive
In terms of employment.
and redevelopment and
Community
sort of
revitalization,
political
yeah.
and economic rejuvenation of that area, and that it would be a significant moneymaker for the county of Santa Barbara as well. And I think that all of a sudden it's happening so fast and so abruptly and without regard that people are freaking. And I think Salud is finding himself kind of caught in a crossfire. Initially, he was very much a three pom-pom cheerleader, and now he's talking about, well, we're going to do $5 million for mitigation, and there's going to be a public hearings in the middle of January about an environmental impact report.
I
Again,
will say though, Nick, to that point, my family obviously is still in Lompoc and I spend quite a bit of time there. My husband works in Lompoc. I don't hear a lot of feedback from people there. Certainly everyone is startled and sometimes annoyed by the noise, but there's far more excitement about what this might portend for the future
Right.
community still, even now, even understanding the inconveniences as they're seen in Lompoc. I'm not hearing from a lot of folks in the Lompoc Valley that say, get rid of this. Quite the opposite. A lot of people are saying, how dare you try to stymie our potential growth?
No,
And
I
I
told him,
respect that. I mean, my family's from there. I get it.
yeah.
All right. Let's just go around. I want to hear one prediction from everybody about what they think a big story of 2025 will be that maybe we haven't touched on yet. Josh, you want to start?
Well, I'll be very interested to see how new council member Winnie Santa Maria affects the dynamic of the city council as it relates to rent control / stabilization. Will she try to rush this? She has presumably 3 allies on the council, or will she take a more measured approach? I know her supporters will probably want this to be happening very quick, but as we have seen with many elected officials, that it's a different job getting elected than it is serving. So will she be able to sort of listen to Randy, to be able to listen to Kristen, to be able to listen to Kelly McAdoo and come up with some plan that is going to pass as opposed to something that will fail? And so that'll be interesting to watch, to see how she navigates that politically. She didn't have a political consultant and she didn't rise up through the Democratic Party, even though they endorsed her. She's an activist, she's an organizer. She did this all by herself. And so it'll be interesting to see, many people take credit for helping her, but she did it herself. So how will she be able to navigate all of that in the context of rent control? Because, man, there is a lot of expectations. People really want a lot out of her really quickly and right away. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. The other thing is, I think the stunner of Doss losing is incredible, but what does that mean now for the county and the Board of Supervisors? Now there'll be more eyes on Roy Lee, just him, not as a contrast to Doss Williams. And if he does not have a good few years, there will be many challengers who will want to take him on 3 years from now in a campaign. Probably not Doss Williams. Who knows if he wants to get back into it? But there's quite a few names that are already out there. So it'll be interesting to see, can Roy stand on his own separate from being not Doss Williams?
Yeah. Nick, what do you see in 2025?
Well, one of the big stories we haven't touched on here yet is Stable Energy, which has bought out Exxon, which was shut down for 10 years, effectively by the oil spill rupture of 2015 caused by negligence by All American Pipeline Company. And they are trying to patch up the old pipeline and get it restarted. The county has a very minor role in all of this, but it's going to be coming up before the supervisors, I believe, at the end of January. And it's going to be Roy Lee's Welcome to the Neighborhood party. And I think, from what I'm hearing, he's got some interesting ideas. So, again, the county has very limited leverage on this one, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Roy handles that.
All right, Megan, you got your hands full there, but give us a 2025 prediction, and then we'll let you go.
Let's just hope I survive 2025. Sorry about this. No, one of the things that I think is going to be a story to watch for sure is the builders remedies projects that we have coming up in Santa Barbara. And, the implications for both how that framework works, or in my view, doesn't work, and what that could look like in our community. Certainly something that I am keeping a close eye on.
Yeah. All right. Gwyn?
Well, first of all, I foresee a feud between Musk and Trump, and I suspect that will come when Musk is on the cover of Time magazine. So that's my prediction. I think if Time magazine really wanted to do something interesting, they would have done that right off the bat. That would have expedited things a little bit.
Remember, they did that with Bannon 8 years ago, and Bannon got fired within a week, I think.
Exactly. So that'll all be interesting. I hope one of my hopes is that I hope the county works hard to try to time things in Montecito, because the traffic here is terrible with with all the houses that are being renovated and the widening of the freeway and the off ramps being closed. And now on top of that, we're going to have the beginning of the Miramar project. So I hope there's a real close look taken about the timing of all that, because it's made it hard locally. And finally, I would say I wouldn't be so quick to see Roy Lee be challenged. I or to foretell that. What I hope for him is that he understands is that he can make a big difference, not by becoming a good student of how things have been done and catching up real quickly, but by continuing to be the person who attempts to do things differently. And my favorite Mad Magazine comic, have I ever said this? Forgive me, but it is my favorite, so I may have said this before. So forgive me if I have, but there's an Alfred E. Newman comic where he's on a tree swing and he's hanging from a tree limb, and he actually doesn't realize that the tree limb is not connected to the tree. And there's no subtitle on that, but if I were to subtitle it, I would say he doesn't know he can't, and so he can. And I hope that he brings his sort of fresh perspectives to and becomes a little bit of a leader on the board in terms of having real conversations and not making so many assumptions right off the bat. So,
all right,
my
Alfred
hope.
Newman channels Roy Lee. Or
the other way around,
Yeah,
perhaps.
I'm sorry. Right. Randy, what do you got for 2025? What's on your list?
Well, I actually, in alignment with what Gwen said, I have a bet down that Musk and Trump aren't going to make it through the new year because there's just too much megalomaniac energy in one room with us with those two guys, and I just hope that we can keep our local elected officials as opposed to our Sacramento officials from not going crazy every time Donald Trump sneezes and trying to hide all the Kleenex. I just think that's you can get crazy trying to follow the guy. I keep thinking as he names his cabinet nominees that he's going to stop mid sentence and look at the TV screen and go, "Live from New York, it's Saturday night," because it's pretty bizarre. Locally, I actually do think because of as the CBID hopefully comes together, they're still trying to figure out who they are. That there will be a vision about State Street. Many of the property owners desperately want something different to happen. They want it to happen pre whatever the eventual plan is, because we know the eventual plan is very much in the offing. So I think that there will be a little bit of change on State Street, hopefully some experimentation, hopefully at least some partial openings, if not full openings. And, because a lot of the parklets and whatnot are also very long in the tooth. And it's something that just can't, we're going to go into our 6th summer of this. And once again, I'm still not understanding what status quo produces for us. So moving forward, if we can make some progress, it'll be good. We need to clean, we need to light. Those are two big things.
I remember somebody campaigned for mayor on that.
Yeah, and you can see how much attention I've gotten from my colleagues on council.
All right. Last thing I want to say, the person I'm going to watch is Gavin Newsom, who's already positioning himself to run for president for 2028. He's going to be going out of office, but he made his homelessness his signature issue. He's spent $25 billion on it. Nobody's quite sure what happened to all the money. But Nick, I know you have reported some incremental improvements here locally, and hopefully that will continue. But that's going to be that's going to be what the cloud above his head as he tries to run for president. So we'll see if anything of a substantive nature can be accomplished in 2025. So with that, thank you very much, Mayor Randy Rowse, Councilmember Meagan Harmon, Gwyn Lurie, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
Thanks,
everyone.
Jerry. Thanks, everybody.